My best friend said our dorm wasn't clean and told me to add a threshold at the door. She said ghosts can't lift their feet, so they won't be able to get inside. At night, the roommates all accused me of being superstitious and backward. But no sooner had the lights gone out than a bang, bang, bang sounded, like a ghost kicking the door. The first night in the new dorm. I woke in the middle of the night, needing to use the bathroom. But I saw a man come in through the doorway, turn, and climb onto my roommate Emma's bed. I was so scared I didn't dare move. Then Emma's unbearable voice reached my ears. But then I thought the dormitory door was deadbolt. If someone picked the lock, I would definitely have heard it. It must have been her secretly opening the door in the middle of the night to let a man in. The next day, I dragged her into a fierce scolding. She was full of grievance, dragging me to pull up the dormitory surveillance footage. No one had come in. That made it all the stranger. That night, around midnight, I needed to go to the bathroom again. Sure enough, the man was back. I immediately took out my phone to capture evidence. To my surprise, the man had actually climbed onto my other roommate Sophie's bed. I shouted and flipped on a light. The roommates were all awake. There was no man in the room. I took out my phone to check the video I'd recorded. He wasn't in it either. My roommates all called me crazy. I told my close friend who knows about the occult. She immediately asked me to video call her so she could see the dorm surroundings. After watching, her expression changed dramatically. She set our dorm backs onto a Ean mountain and faces the ghost gate. And with the four of us girls, the Ean energy is especially strong. They easily attract some lewd, malevolent spirits. I felt my scalp go numb. My best friend told me to go to the hardware market right away and have a locust wood threshold custom made to install at the dormitory door. Ghosts can't lift their feet. If they can't step over the threshold, they can't get into the room. If he couldn't get in for 3 days straight, I'd leave on my own. I searched the whole building materials market and still couldn't find a locust wood threshold like that. When I was anxious, I ran into an old carpenter with a grizzled beard who said he happened to have one at home. After rummaging around his place for a long time, he produced a very old threshold whose dimensions were a perfect fit. I was delighted and asked him how much it cost. But the old man said that this unwanted junk was fine to give to me. He only wanted to know why I was looking for that kind of threshold. I thought it best not to let more people know about such matters. I made up an excuse on the spot, slipped the old man 100 yuan, and hurried back. Back in the dorm, I quickly fetched the tools to install a threshold. At that moment, the 3 roommates came back and asked what I was doing. I told them the situation, saying that once the threshold was in place, the ghost would never be able to come in again. My roommate, convinced there was really a ghost, was so frightened she didn't even go into the room. She turned and ran away. I didn't care about them. Lights out. I lay in my bed, turning over and over, unable to sleep. Just then I heard a thudding, thud, 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 coming from the doorway. Every hair on my body stood on end. I analyzed the source of the sound carefully. It wasn't the sound of someone knocking. It was the sound of a foot kicking the doorframe. It sounded like a pair of feet trying to hop over the threshold, but failing, toes striking the top with a sharp knock. I was so frightened I dove under the covers, clamping my ears shut and not daring to move. Then there was a sudden humming vibration that made me jolt in alarm. It was my phone. My best friend had sent a WeChat asking how I was. After I told her, my best friend immediately grew anxious and said there was something wrong with that threshold. It wasn't the sound of a ghost kicking the threshold. It was the sound of a ghost kowtowing. It was the sound of a ghost's head striking the threshold. If she wasn't mistaken, that threshold should be a ghost threshold, used specifically to open the gate for ghosts. If the lead ghost is worshipped for 3 full days, the gate of ghosts will burst wide open, and then the lot of us will be dead. I was terrified and asked my best friend what to do. She asked me where I had encountered that old man. I told her the whole situation. My best friend scolded me for being brainless. What are the odds of running into that old man? And of all things, there just happened to be a threshold that matched in size and material. I was stunned and asked my friend what to do. She told me to hurry and go take that threshold down. But I absolutely couldn't bring myself to go. My legs turned to jelly. My best friend, out of options, had me download a GIF of 3 incense sticks on my phone. Then she had me hold it up and bow toward the door 3 times just to steady things for tonight. Sure enough, After the bows, the pounding stopped. The next day, I went to find that old man with the threshold in hand. I demanded to know whether the threshold was really made of locust wood. The old man was very honest and said it wasn't, but he couldn't understand why I would want a ghost threshold. I slammed the threshold onto the floor with a bang and said this is the true ghost threshold. Last night, the ghost kowtowed all night. In a couple of days, when the ghost gate opens wide, we'll all be dead. The old man said this threshold is made of poplar wood. Compare it with locust wood. Which one looks more like a ghost threshold? I was suddenly stunned. Yang wood is yang and can block a ghost path. Locust wood carries ghosts. Using it as a threshold is like building a bridge for them. And your dormitory happens to be situated at the ghost gate. If you put a locust wood threshold there, you'd truly be opening the door to 100 spirits. I suddenly felt the old man's words made a lot of sense. Isn't locust wood known for attracting ghosts? When I was little, I often heard stories about locust trees being home to spirits. How did I not think of that now? But my best friend has played with me since we were kids. She wouldn't lie to me. I can't let 2 casual sentences make me doubt my best friend. So I first asked the old man what he did and how he knew so much. The old man said that the back hill of our school used to be a mass burial ground where tens of thousands of wrong souls are trapped and cannot reincarnate. His family had guarded the gate of the dead here for 3 generations. Unexpectedly, this land was turned into a university. Those teachers didn't believe in ghosts or spirits, completely closed-minded. They even built dorms there, and of all things, it ended up being the women's dormitory. All the conditions were set. Every year our school would have several people inexplicably commit suicide. They all lived in my dorm. My scalp prickled instantly, because I had indeed heard before about someone at our school committing suicide. But many universities have news of student suicides, so I didn't pay it much mind. I just hadn't expected it to be in the dormitory where I lived. Who knew the old man then asked me whether, after I installed that poplar threshold yesterday, my 3 roommates had stopped coming into the room. I said they were afraid the ghost would move into other dorms. The old man smiled and said, they aren't afraid of the ghost. They're the ghosts themselves. They can't step over that threshold. I felt the old man was starting to make things up. If my roommates were ghosts, who was that man who came into the room in the middle of the night and climbed onto the bed? The old man could tell I didn't believe him. Then let me go back tonight and place your 3 roommates' shoes by each of their beds. 1 toe pointing inward, the other toe pointing outward. If it's a person, there won't be any effect. If it's a ghost, it'll get lost and never be able to climb into the bed. I left, half believing, half doubting. Following my best friend's advice, I cut a locust tree from the back hill and made a threshold out of it. But when I returned to the dorm to install it, the old man's words suddenly came back to me. Indeed, the locust wood threshold does feel more like a ghost threshold. I didn't know whom to believe. In the end, I decided to first use the old man's method to test whether my roommate was human or ghost. If it's a ghost, then I'll believe the old man. If it's a person, I'll certainly call the police and have them caught tomorrow. So I pulled the threshold up and put it away. I sat at my desk at an angle, pretending to read while waiting for them to return. Sure enough, when my roommate came back, she first did a quick check at the door before she came into the room. This made my heart flinch. Could they really be afraid of that threshold? After they came inside, they kept sighing about how troublesome it was to crash in someone else's dorm last night. It's still more comfortable in your own dorm. You still ask me why I removed the threshold. Not planning to ward off ghosts anymore. I brushed them off with a few meaningless words, and while they were changing shoes and washing up, I placed their shoes as the old man had instructed, 1 pointing inward and 1 outward, tucked away in a hidden spot by the bed. Then I waited for lights out to see how they get into bed. As before, when they returned to the dorm each day, they got in and out of bed at least 4 or 5 times. But today she hadn't come back even once. I couldn't help but start feeling uneasy inside. But I thought maybe it was just a matter of probability. Then I looked at them again, lively, chatting and laughing, not at all like ghosts. I began to suspect I was just overthinking it. And so, at last, lights out time arrived. But the 3 roommates were still giggling and chattering, refusing to sleep. I pretended to lose my temper and scolded them a few times. They too wisely fell silent. Strangely, the three of them paced back and forth in front of their own beds with heads bowed, yet not one of them got into bed. Fear gripped me in an instant. I mustered my courage and asked Emma, "Why won't you go to bed?" Who would have thought Emma would be sobbing? "What's going on? Where did my bed go?" My head went numb with a buzzing, and in an instant everything went blank. The old man really hadn't lied to me, but I had to pretend to be calm. I couldn't let them discover what I'd done, or I certainly wouldn't survive the night. I swallowed a few times to steady myself, planning to pretend to offer some concerned words. Unexpectedly, Clara suddenly grabbed Emma and said, "Are you blind? Isn't your bed right here?" Emma was sniffling and trying to say something more when Clara suddenly shouted, "Shut up!" I shuddered all over, my soul nearly frightened out of me. Could Clara really see Emma's bed? Or had Clara already discovered something and been afraid Emma would let it slip? I hadn't reacted yet. Emma suddenly ran to the foot of my bed and said, "Rosie, I'm scared. I want to sleep with you." And then he tried to get onto my bed. I bolted upright and shoved the pillow to block the entrance. "No way. Emma, I'm even more scared than you, really." As soon as I finished, Sophie grabbed the side of my bed and said, "Then the four of us will sleep together. Our dorm is so creepy. We'll be less scared together. Rosie, you should come too." I was so frightened that I immediately knelt on the bed and kept kowtowing. "Sophie, no, no, no. I'm begging you." To my surprise, Clara ignored Sophie and instead kept scrutinizing in front of the three of their beds. My heart was lodged in my throat. If Clara discovered that I had tampered with their shoes, I probably wouldn't survive the moment. My mind spun rapidly, searching for a way to break the deadlock. Unexpectedly, Clara suddenly looked up and stared at me intently. For a moment, I felt my soul leave my body. I trembled as I said, "Rosie, is there something wrong?" Who knew? Clara suddenly shouted, "Run, there's a ghost." I immediately lost my composure. Someone shouted there's a ghost. I didn't know what to do. I watched as the three of them bolted out the door in an instant. I quickly jumped out of bed and slammed the door shut. I turned and collapsed to the floor, letting out a long, deep breath. I was about to get up when I suddenly saw someone sitting on my bed. Looking closely, it was the same male ghost from before. I screamed in terror, struggling to run out, but the door simply wouldn't budge. I instinctively pulled out my phone and called my best friend for help. She panicked the moment she heard me. She told me to hurry and put the locust wood threshold in place, then bite my fingertip and drip 3 drops of blood onto it. Then kneel and bang your head on the threshold 3 times. The skull must hit the sill with a bang, bang, bang. First, steady the situation at hand. I said, "If ghosts have already come, and what's the point of the threshold?" My best friend said, "Don't ask so many questions. There's no time." When I looked again, the ghost had somehow slipped to stand directly in front of me. I kept striking at it with the locust wood threshold, but I could never land a blow on the ghost. My best friend shouted into the phone, "Bite your finger, smear the blood on the threshold." I hurriedly did as she said, then swung at the ghost once more. With a bang, the ghost vanished. At that moment, my best friend shouted, "Quick, put up the threshold." I went mad, hurriedly set the threshold in place, then bit my finger to draw blood and knocked my head to the floor. After finishing all that, I held my breath and scanned the surroundings. My best friend said on the phone, "Don't look, he's blocked outside the door." Only then did I let out a sigh of relief. Then I recounted to her everything that had happened today. My best friend scolded me soundly. She said it was all a setup by that old man and the male ghost. They were the ones creating the spectral labyrinth that kept my 3 roommates from finding their beds. There's no such thing as reversing shoes to throw a ghost off course. If my 3 roommates had been ghosts, they would have harmed me long ago. There would be no need to wait until I discovered it to make a move. I thought it over carefully and felt she was right. I also suddenly understood why Clara had stared at me so intently just now and insisted there was a ghost. It was because she had seen that male ghost sitting right behind me. It's not that a ghost cried, there's a ghost. My God, how could I be so stupid? But I don't understand what the relationship is between that male ghost and the old man, or what their goal is. My best friend said that if she wasn't mistaken, that old man should be a spirit forger. This man is the ghost he's currently training. The feng shui of our dorm is overwhelmingly Yin, an ideal place for harnessing Yin energy to train ghosts. Once he finishes training 5 of them, he sells them to wealthy clients to make money. It's what they call the legendary 5 ghosts transporting gold. And the old man tricked me into using the ghost threshold to open the ghost gate. He must have wanted to draw out a ferocious spirit to train on, maybe to make a fortune. My jaw dropped. So it turned out there was such a staggering conspiracy hidden here. Good thing I didn't betray my best friend. My best friend's final instruction was that every day I must drip 3 drops of fingertip blood onto the locust wood threshold. Then I must touch my head to the threshold and knock out 3 crisp bows, each making a clear bang. After 3 days, this would seal the ghost gate and turn misfortune into blessing. I memorized it all. The next morning when I woke up, I was furious. I called the police to have that old man arrested. But the officers chewed me out, scolding how ridiculous it was for a college student to be acting all superstitious and paranoid. I knew I wouldn't get anywhere explaining it, so I went to confront the old man myself. I can't let him harm anyone else. But then I thought, if I went there and lost my temper, the old man would surely guess my friend's plan, and then he would find a way to foil it. Better to wait a couple of days before taking action. But then I thought if I didn't show up today and tell him about last night's roommate testing incident, the old man would surely grow suspicious, and who knows what tricks he might come up with to counter it. I pondered it over and decided to go. Then I would tell a lie and come right back. Might as well probe the old man's background while I'm at it. To my surprise, he never once looked me in the eye. He didn't say a single word either. I didn't bother with it. I said what I had to and left. The old man suddenly called out to me, urging me to take that poplar threshold with me. He said the gates of the underworld were wide open tonight. It might offer some protection. I couldn't possibly trust him again, and I certainly wouldn't let his insinuations make me doubt my best friend, who knew the old man insisted I bring it. You can use it, or you can leave it. Whether I make it through tonight is my own business. He did his best. Anyone hearing that would get a jolt. I hesitated a long time, but in the end I decided to take it. Anyway, as long as I didn't stand in the doorway, that threshold was just a useless piece of wood. I had planned to throw away that poplar threshold halfway there. Who would have thought that, lost in a tangle of wild thoughts, I had somehow found my way back to the dorm without realizing it. I simply tossed it under the bed. Only then did I remember. I had been so absorbed in confronting the old man today that I hadn't yet sprinkled blood on the threshold and bowed my head in supplication. I quickly pricked my fingertip, let 3 drops of blood fall, then knocked my forehead against the threshold. Bang once. Bang twice. Just as I was about to strike the 3rd time, I stopped involuntarily. This voice is so familiar. Isn't this the sound of a ghost kowtowing that I heard that night? Exactly the same. I was terrified in an instant. It's not that I'm afraid of ghosts. It's that I'm afraid the person I trust most could really hurt me. I raised my hand and slapped myself twice. Rosie, you can't waver anymore. You can't doubt the person you trust most. Otherwise, what does trust even mean? I glanced down at the locust wood threshold before me. Boom! I knocked my head for the 3rd time. At night, the 3 roommates returned. They walked straight across the threshold and sat down. Clara spat. What a lousy teacher. What a lousy school. I don't know what happened. Emma said Rosie went to see the teacher today to report the dorm was haunted and asked for a room change. The teacher tore into her, saying if she continued spreading feudal superstitions, she'd be expelled immediately. I hurriedly comforted her. It's okay, Rosie. Just hang on for a couple more days, and it'll pass. Rosie glanced at the newly installed threshold by the door and nodded. But inside I suddenly felt unmoored. Lights out. Everything was fine. The slow, steady breaths of my 3 roommates drifted in one by one. My own heart gradually settled, just as I was about to fall asleep. Hood, hood, hood. 3 consecutive sounds like a ghost kowtowing. I jolted upright, staring fixedly at the doorway. That's right, the sound was coming from that locust wood threshold. My heart suddenly panicked. Why would a ghost be kowtowing here? While I hesitated, the sound of kowtowing came again. And this time the noise was clearly chaotic. It sounded as if a dozen ghosts were craning their necks together. Bang, 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 bang. I didn't know what to do. So scared, I hurriedly pulled out my phone to call my best friend, but no one answered. I'm going crazy. I suddenly remembered the animated image of 3 incense sticks I'd downloaded last night. I hurriedly opened it and bowed repeatedly toward the door. To my surprise, the sound grew louder instead, and there were more of them. I can't do this. I called my best friend again. Thankfully, she answered, but she told me not to be afraid. That's the end of the ghost road. They're here to vent their anger. Let me hold on a little longer. Once dawn breaks, it'll be fine. After saying that, she hung up the phone. I don't know why my best friend suddenly became like this, and no one could have kept up under those circumstances. I immediately got up, intending to wake my roommates so we could huddle together for warmth. But then I suddenly thought, with such a loud noise, how could they possibly not have heard it? Were they pretending to be asleep, or was there some other possibility? I couldn't bear to think any further. At that moment, the sound at the door grew louder. Bang, 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 bang. Each strike felt like it was hammering right into my chest. And at that moment, I suddenly remembered what the old man had said today. Tonight, the gates of the underworld are wide open. Whether I live through the night is on me. He has done all he can. My composure collapsed in an instant. I rolled out of bed, grabbed the poplar threshold from under the mattress, and shoved it up against the door. Strangely enough, in an instant the sound stopped. Only the pounding of my heart remained. I let out a long breath and slumped down by the door, unable to hold back my tears. I had never felt such loneliness and despair. Even if my father never cared for me and my mother never loved me, I could still endure all the hardships, study like crazy to get into college, and leave that hellish home. I told myself that no matter how hard life got, I could carry it on my own. But I really don't know whom I offended. Now even ghosts come pick on me. I wiped away my tears. At worst, I'd die. Even dead, I could become a ghost. And then I'd fight tooth and nail against those ghosts who killed me. Who's afraid of whom? Thinking that, I actually stopped feeling scared. I even opened the door and stood in the doorway, wanted to see how exactly these ghosts planned to kill me. But the empty corridor held nothing, and my heart inexplicably fell hollow too. I went back to my room and lay on the bed, tears streaming uncontrollably. But I still comforted myself. Sleep. In this world, no one can protect you except yourself. If heaven truly comes for you, then just go with it. Just as I thought this, I suddenly felt a chill breeze at my ear. I froze instantly, and then another cold draft swept over me. My soul is gone. I know a ghost has come into the room, and it's lying right next to me. How could this be possible? I'd already put up 2 thresholds. What more do you want from me? I screamed and cried my heart out, yet no sound would come. I tried to run, but I couldn't move at all. I knew this time I was truly finished. The ghost kept blowing on me without stopping, until I sank into boundless despair and completely gave up resisting. I felt as if I were already dead. Then unexpectedly the ghost said, "I'm here to save you. Meet me beneath the big poplar on the back hill afternoon." He vanished as soon as he finished speaking. I bolted upright in a panic and screamed at the top of my lungs. When I finally calmed down, I found the dormitory empty, not a soul in sight. I turned to look out the window. The sky was already bright. I checked my phone. It was exactly 12 noon. I had actually slept until this time. So what had happened just now? Was it a dream or real? I hurried out of bed to check the door and found both thresholds still there. So everything that happened last night was real. Then did those 2 thresholds actually stop the ghost? If they did, why was a ghost still able to come in? If they didn't, why did only one ghost come in? Even if he had somehow stumbled in by luck, he should have been here to harm me. So why say he came to save me? I was completely thrown into disarray. I still went to the back hill, because I couldn't understand why a ghost would ask to meet me in the daytime. If he had wanted to harm me, he could easily have taken me away last night. I gathered my courage and walked forward. From a distance, I saw a man standing under the big poplar tree. As I drew closer, I realized it was that male ghost. I was so frightened I turned and ran. But the male ghost held me fast. He told me to calm down and not be afraid. I simply couldn't. He said if he were a ghost, How could he possibly appear here in broad daylight? I said, if you weren't a ghost, why did you show up in my dorm late at night? He said, if it weren't for him, I would have long ago been killed by my best friend and that old man. I said, if you want to kill me, just do it. There's no need to spin stories for so much trouble over my worthless life. I can't take it anymore. If it comes to that, I'll kill myself. I slumped to the floor and sobbed my heart out. The male ghost actually crouched on one side, just waiting for me to calm down. I wiped my tears and looked at him. What exactly do you want? To my surprise, the male ghost actually pulled out a photograph and handed it to me. I took it and looked. On it was a car crash scene. The person who had died was me. I was stunned. I don't understand what this means. I was fine. How could I possibly be dead? The male ghost said, I had an accident on the way to register at school and have been in the ICU on life support for several days. He was a medium my family hired to summon my soul back. I hadn't expected the grudges from my original family to be so heavy. The ghost absolutely refused to return, so it came to the university and checked me in itself. What I hadn't expected more was that my best friend and that old man had set a trap here to trap me. It could only leave its body and cross into the underworld to come find me. Its intention was to take me back home. I was completely baffled. I couldn't understand a word he was saying. Even if what he says is true, does that mean I died and came back as a ghost to enroll in college? Could my roommate be a ghost too? Are we all ghosts in this entire university? Is this a ghost university? The man actually said yes. This really is a ghost university, a place where college students who died in various accidents gather. I still couldn't believe it. But then the man took out his phone and opened the news. It indeed reported, a certain university freshman, Luo, surname, died in a car accident on the way to register at school. My mind exploded. Faint fragments of memory surfaced, but they couldn't be pieced together. My head felt like it would split. The man comforted me, telling me not to be afraid. As long as I listened to him, he promised he would be able to bring me back. I clutched my head and sobbed. I think every one of you makes a valid point, and yet each of you has glaring flaws. I really don't know who to believe. The man said, this is perfectly normal, because right now I'm still a living soul. Being human hasn't completely ended, and becoming a ghost hasn't completely begun. It is precisely the blurred point where right and wrong merge, where yin and yang contradict each other. Don't panic, don't be afraid. I nodded. The man said the first time he left his body and crossed over to find me was that time I saw him climb onto Emma's bed. But he wasn't bullying Emma. He happened to catch her in the middle of a sexy dream. Because my grudge was so deep it made me hard to find, he could only check one by one. I called Emma to verify. Emma hesitated and said that what she dreamed that day was indeed her ex-boyfriend, not a strange man. I'm beginning to actually believe in this medium. The spirit medium went on to say that he found me precisely the day after the time I screamed. He had originally thought he could easily bring me back once he returned. But to his surprise, I had been beguiled by my best friend and the old man. They set up a ghost threshold at the doorway. I don't understand. Wasn't a ghost threshold made specifically to open the ghost gate? Shouldn't I be able to go back very easily then? The medium said that a ghost threshold in the living world summons ghosts, but in the underworld, it's just a normal doorstep. Only a threshold made from wood of the opposite polarity, pure yang, can send me back. But didn't the old man give me a poplar threshold on the first day? Isn't that yang? Just then a gust of wind came from who knows where, making the poplar leaves slap and rustle. The spirit master pointed to the poplar behind him and said, when the wind blows the poplar, the ghosts clap their hands. The yin energy of poplar is heavier than that of locust wood. And my best friend knew my family had arranged for someone to come save me. They set up all sorts of configurations to confuse me, like laying out thresholds for ghosts. As a result, every time he tried to leave his body and come over, he couldn't break through the arrangement. They had no choice but to have my family keep kowtowing in the ritual hall. As long as the threshold to the spirit world can be broken, they can summon me back. I froze suddenly. Could that thumping sound of the ghost kowtowing actually be my family kowtowing? The spirit medium nodded. My heart suddenly went soft, and tears began to fall. Maybe my resentment toward my parents really was a bit deep. but I still didn't understand. Why on earth would my best friend want to hurt me? And what exactly is her relationship with that old man? The medium said that old man was a professional walker of the underworld. He specialized in helping certain sorcerers carry out matters in the netherworld. And my close friend hired him to keep me trapped here, to prevent me from coming back to life. My friend and I had grown up together. Our bond was deep. I couldn't understand why. Jealousy. The spirit medium spoke those two words. I understood instantly. I knew my best friend had been jealous of me since we were children. Apart from our original families, I was better than her in every way. Yet I still couldn't believe she would do something like that. Who would have thought the medium said that kind people can never see the evil in others' hearts? I fell silent. But there was one thing I still didn't understand. Since my best friend and the old man were in cahoots, why would they slander each other? The medium said that if you really want to trap someone, you make them slowly lose themselves in confusion. I fell utterly silent. The medium took a brand new threshold from behind the big poplar tree. A talisman was still stuck to it. He said it was a peachwood threshold he had specially brought from the living world. Peachwood is supremely young, impervious to ghosts. The talisman was just an extra precaution. He told me to take it back to the dorm right away and install it on the door frame immediately. Then remove the talisman and knock your head on the threshold 3 times. He'll be able to pick up the signal from over there. Then he'll perform the ritual to open the ghost gate, and I can return to my body, reborn. Then whether it's love or hate, favor or feud, I can confront my best friend face to face. But remember, don't be fooled by my best friend again. Remember, after today I can never go back. I nodded hard. I ran back to the dormitory and stared at the 2 thresholds standing in the doorway. Without a second thought, I tore it off and tossed it aside. Quickly, I installed the peachwood threshold. Then I carefully removed that talisman. I let out a breath and was about to kowtow. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was my best friend calling. I hung up immediately. I knocked my head on the floor once. Bang! The phone rang again. I hung up once more. Then I knocked my head on the floor for the second time. Bang! I was just about to go for the third. A sudden voice from behind. Wait! I turned my head and saw my best friend standing right behind me. She was looking at me with tears streaming down her face. I know her all too well. I could tell at a glance that she was truly crying now. It wasn't an act, but saying anything in this situation was pointless. As a Shenghan, I couldn't even make out basic right from wrong. I'll deal with everything after I go back and get reborn. But my best friend blocked me firmly, insisting I take a good look at the photo in the news article. She said we could kowtow a 3rd time later. I thought for a moment, unlocked my phone, and pulled up the article. I flipped further and found another photo from the scene. In that picture, my best friend lay beside me, her flesh mangled and bloody. The caption beside it read that the other deceased was this college student's best friend. According to reports, the friend had been taking her to register at the university when an accident occurred. Both died in the crash. I'm about to go insane, demanding of my best friend what on earth was going on. My best friend also broke down crying and said that, actually, both of us had long been dead. She said she knew I was timid and feared I couldn't accept it, which was why she had never told me. Otherwise, how could there be phone calls between the worlds of the living and the dead? Otherwise, why would I suddenly appear here now? I collapsed in an instant. All of this was too strange, too chaotic. Once again, I sank into panic and despair, because I truly couldn't tell who was real and who wasn't. My best friend said she especially understood the disorientation I felt as a living soul. I don't have the kind of spiritual training she does to protect myself. She had actually planned to come find me early this morning. But when she was alive, she had harmed some spirits while performing rituals for people. So after she died, they kept chasing her, taking revenge. She still couldn't make it here in time. When I called her and said I'd seen a ghost, she knew a spirit refiner had sent out a soul to scout for living souls, because living souls are the easiest to catch and refine. But she herself was caught in a crisis and couldn't free herself to come rescue me. That's why they had me block the way with a locust wood threshold. I simply hadn't expected them to be so skilled in the occult, able to conspire inside and out to fool me. And the Peachwood threshold right now that opens the ghost path is their final move. If I were to kowtow for the third time, they'd lead me into their ritual hall and then take control of me. But they say I'm in the ICU, not completely dead yet. They held a ritual to have my family kowtow and call me back. My best friend said she knew there was resentment in my heart, that I couldn't accept death. But why didn't they consider that when I was alive my parents thought I was superfluous and couldn't wait for me to die? If I was dead, how could they possibly spend so much money keeping me in the ICU and kowtowing to bring me back? What they've really changed? Do they truly want to save me? The more I asked myself, the less confident I became. I began to sob. Just then, a pounding sounded at the door again. This time, each thud felt as if it were striking the crown of my head. My skull split with pain. I collapsed to the floor. My best friend hurriedly wrapped her arms around me, saying they had noticed I hadn't kept bowing the third time and were worried. So she began performing the ritual to set me on the right path. My head ached unbearably, and I hurriedly asked my best friend what I should do. She put her arms around me and asked, "So from now on, do you still doubt me?" I said, "I don't doubt you anymore. I only believe you." Best friend, then can you accept that your death will dispel your grudges? Me, yes. I have no longing left for the world. Best friend, then will you listen to me from now on? I nodded. Best friend, I want you to say it out loud. Otherwise, if one more person utters a few reckless words, you'll waver again. Me, yes. I'll do whatever you say. Best friend, good. Once these words are spoken, they cannot be changed, or you'll be struck by 5 thunderbolts and your soul will scatter. I was already driven nearly insane by those pounding noises, so I could only nod repeatedly. Okay. When she finished speaking, my best friend grabbed me and we flew out. I don't know how much time passed. I came to from unconsciousness. I was lying in a strange house. My best friend came over and asked if I was feeling any better. I said the pain in my head still came in sharp waves. She lit a cigarette for me and said smoking might ease the pain a little. I hesitated, took the cigarette, and after a single puff, I choked and started coughing hard. I let out a breath and wiped the tears that had streamed out with my coughing. When I went to take a second drag, I realized the thing pinched between my fingers wasn't a cigarette at all, but an incense stick. My mind went numb in an instant, blank as a sheet. When I looked up again, my best friend was gone. I was completely dumbfounded. At that moment, voices of 3 people came from outside. "Man, it's done, it's done." Not easy at all. Didn't expect this little girl to be so hard to deal with. Old man, if she isn't prevented from completely losing herself, how can she be firmly controlled? This girl is pure by nature and upright in conduct. She's the hardest to find and the hardest to refine among the 5 ghosts. Otherwise, I wouldn't have placed my eldest granddaughter by her side since childhood and set up this 20-year scheme. Bestie, Rosie, you accepted my charm and took my incense. Don't go back on your word, or you'll be struck by 5 thunders and your soul will be blown to pieces. This time I truly understood. In this world, apart from myself, I can trust no one. They may be alive, but everything they say is ghost talk. I sprang up and was about to burst out after them to settle the score. But the moment I opened the door, a tremendous force knocked me flat to the ground. I looked down and saw that the doorframe held the peachwood threshold I had installed at the dormitory entrance. I tried countless times, getting beaten and bruised all over, but I could never step over that threshold. In the end, I was refined into one of the 5 ghosts and sold to a fraud ring. On the surface, they looked like they used business tactics and scripts to brainwash people and steal their money. In truth, the ones who really did the brainwashing were us 5 ghosts. We stayed by the target's side day and night. In ways you cannot see, we continuously manipulate your desires, emotions, morality, instincts, and shame. My responsibility is the morality part. Our first assignment was to manipulate a recent college graduate, have him secretly sell the house and transfer the money over. But when I clicked confirm, I hesitated. No matter how much the other 4 ghosts provoked and brainwashed me, it wasn't enough. They wanted to go up. As long as I adjust his sense of right and wrong and strip away his last bit of guard, this deal will go through. I stepped in and berated him until I woke him up and he gave up on the transfer. The other 4 ghosts were stunned. They kept complaining that by doing this I would drag them down and bring the 5 thunderbolts upon them, because no one could escape the control of that ghostly threshold. I told them not to be afraid, then drew a talisman on the palms of their hands. Not only could it resist the 5 thunderbolts, it could also turn and strike back at those necromancers. Sure enough, just as the 5 thunder strike was about to hit us, it suddenly vanished. I knew it had gone off to strike those spirit refiners. They were even more stunned, so I had them divide the spell and pass it to different 5 ghosts. Let everyone break free from the ghost threshold's control and help those who were brainwashed regain their sanity. The 5 ghosts moving gold should be transporting wealth to the poor, not sending riches to those evildoers and people who don't need money. Everyone nodded in agreement and immediately began to act. I finally laughed out loud, the first time in years that a laugh came from my heart. After suffering so much, I allowed them to forge me into one of the 5 ghosts, all for this very day. My father had been cheated out of everything and killed himself. When my mother gave birth to me, she hemorrhaged badly. There was no money for treatment. My mother said they would save the baby, not the grown woman, and she died too. From a young age, I was raised in my uncle's home. They all said I had a hard, unlucky life that killed my parents, and so they despised me from childhood. Just let the stutterer live, that's all I asked. When I was 18, I planned to jump into the river and kill myself. By chance, I ran into an old Taoist priest. He begged me not to die, saying I was already being targeted by 3 ghost refiners. The moment I die, I'll be seized and have my soul bound with the ghost threshold to be forged into a ghost. I didn't understand what that meant. The old Taoist told me I was supposed to be a little princess, loved by my parents and living a blissful life. It was only because someone used the 5 ghost gold transporting technique to control my father that my life turned out this way. He asked if I would be willing to participate in a scheme with him to avenge my father and save countless unfortunate families. I would do it 100 times over. So the old Taoist laid out his plan. These spirit smiths often use the same trick. They craft an illusion and brainwash you with a fabricated story. Once you've completely lost yourself, they lock you in with the ghost threshold. But you entered this of your own accord, so you must carry out a self-inflicted psychological destruction. Under no circumstances must they discover you, or you'll be trapped in the illusion forever, unable to get out. The main thing is that in the end you'll really die and become a ghost. Are you willing? I smiled and said, if I don't go to hell, who will? The old Taoist smiled with satisfaction. Then she gave me a charm to protect me and break the spell. An unlucky poor kid picked up a lottery ticket. When he cashed it in, he won $5 million. Yes, it was me and my 5 ghostly companions who did it. Just as we were happily celebrating, that old Taoist appeared. He told me I would sacrifice myself to save all living beings, earning boundless merit. I could be reborn into a wealthy family and enjoy all their riches and honors. I was so moved that I cried. My 4 little companions hugged me tightly, rejoicing for me. They say I've endured so much suffering that I deserve all of this.